Welcome to the LawyerFair.co.uk daily podcast. LawyerFair helps businesses find the right lawyer at the fairest price. But on this podcast, we just chew the fat with some great guests.
Yes, welcome to the LawyerFair Daily Podcast. It's Andrew Weaver here, the CEO of LawyerFair.co.uk, and so excited was I about today's topic and guest that I hounded her through most of her recent holiday. But welcome, Dana. Dana Denis-Smith, is that how you pronounce it?
Denis-Smith.
Denis-Smith.
The English way of saying it.
I apologise, I should have checked that first. But Dana, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Dana is CEO and co-founder of Obelisk Support, and both Dana and Obelisk have won many awards. Most recently, I think you were recognised as the 2015 Outstanding Innovator by the Legal Week publication. But the one award I picked up on was that Obelisk was also named by the Times as one of the UK's top 50 employers for women. And it's the historic place of women in law that I'm particularly interested in discussing, because Dana is the founder of a fascinating digital project called First 100 Years Women in Law. So Dana, give me please, and those who are listening, a little background about the first 100 years.
Well, the idea came to me part of the general interest I have in gender and diversity and the woman's place in the workplace. And it really struck me that I'm a qualified solicitor, and I had no sense of our own history as women in the profession. And that didn't bother me when I was practicing. But as I reflected about where we came from, where we headed, and why we're struggling to create a diverse and inclusive workplace, I realized that maybe a historic perspective on this issue could be helpful. It will really illuminate where we come from, and it maybe will give us a sense of heritage that we feel we can identify with, and maybe will make us stay longer in the profession. And to my surprise, when I look back in history, I realized we haven't actually been in the profession for 100 years. So the 100 years hasn't happened yet. And that's where the idea of the project, to be called the First 100 Years of Women in Law, came.
Now, the 100 years is essentially 2019, is that right?
That's right, that's the anniversary, yes.
So the project is running through to them with various initiatives, which we can have a chat about. But there's a fantastic timeline on the first 100. The website, for those that are interested and want to look at this while we're chatting, the website is First 100 Years, that's 100 in numbers, .org.uk, and there is a fantastic timeline on there, Dana, which is really interesting generally, but it's also quite eye-opening. It's astonishing to me. The first female partner in a law firm was only 30 years ago.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of there's some things that are quite serious in the sense that it is astonishing to have had women in a city law firm coming in at that level so late. But also, there are more, if you like, more anecdotal type bit of information. For example, women, the first time they wore trousers. Women lawyers, actually, even on film, when you look. I couldn't find. I've actually gone to expert film critics to ask about, have they ever come across an actress on film playing a woman lawyer wearing trousers, and we couldn't place it anywhere. Right. And it's only in the 90s that women were allowed to wear trousers in their firms. So there are things that actually we've progressed so far, but we've forgotten. It's really important to bring them back and really open our eyes to how far we've come, and yet how much there is still to change.
Well, I think the phrase heritage is exactly the right word, actually, that sense of heritage. And I mean, I have to be completely honest, I have a young daughter now, 2 years old, and something like this really opens up my eyes about what a different world she's going to encounter than those kind of pioneers, not just in law, of course, but in many other areas. Have there been things that you've discovered, Dana, that were particularly surprising to you, or things that, that raised your eyebrow a little?
I mean, there are, some really nice stories. I mean, I think the nice thing about the project is that it's centered around personal stories and journeys. So what I really enjoy is finding out things that I would have never found out about successful women unless we'd asked the questions in a more personal way. So there were things about what happened in their early years as children, maybe a parent dying early on or something like that, really shaped how they've run their lives, whether they made them forceful, or wanting to give something back to their mothers, or, the different choices they've had to make. And I think, to me, the key lesson of the project so far is that diversity, to me, is not about whether you're black or white or woman or man. It's actually about the opportunities and the choices you have. So to me, it's about empowering people through the choices they have, rather than being, held back by other kind of, racial or gender-related considerations. I think that really creating role models around these choices is really important, so that we can almost create our own ideal character that we can, shape and become our role model. So it's the kind of different snippets that I can pick up from the different stories I've come across from different women that inspire me. So it's not just necessarily one individual, but the different stories together make me feel that I can succeed too. And I think that's a really important and a different way of presenting the diversity debate, really. I like to think, anyway.
Well, my hero from the timeline is Helena Normanton, who was the first woman to practice as a barrister, second woman to be called to the bar, and astonishingly, according to the timeline, became the first married British woman to be issued with a passport in her maiden name, which again was astonishing to me. That was relatively recent times, I suppose.
She's an incredible fighter, actually, but she was very much involved in the suffragette movement. And, there were a lot of attempts for women to come into the profession. And, there's a tragic case of a lady called Beb who tried to get to be a lawyer and failed. And then she died tragically in childbirth. So she never managed to become a lawyer. And she took the Law Society to court and lost on the grounds that she wasn't deemed to be a person. So the rejection of women to participate in the profession was on the most extraordinary grounds, and it's not known. It's very difficult to build credibility and stature in a profession that had that kind of idea around women. And, for me, the other thing that really struck me, for example, is when I read that, for example, the Law Society, not all the rooms were open to women, even after they let them in. So, for example, I read that only in 1977 the Law Society allowed women in the reading room, which is very rare. I mean, it's in my lifetime. And, I was born, obviously, abroad, under communism. And, the Soviets had flown a woman into space in 1963. But women in England were not allowed in their own professional body reading room. So it's kind of... it's just putting it in perspective and realizing, there's so much. It took such a long time for women to break through, and yet it's taken them even longer to really progress. But we're seeing a lot of movement. I think it's nice to see this historic background, so we really feel empowered by it. I think knowing your own history is really, really an empowering thing. And with technology and kind of the future always being on our mind, we kind of forget how empowering history can be for you. And I think that's the message of the project, to really use that and have a sense of heritage, because that will make you stronger and more likely to stay because you feel you belong rather than not.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point. It's also nice to see the Law Society being a couple of steps behind communism as well. That's a rather nice anecdote. And so you've got four. What are we talking here? 4 years. So what's the plan? What is the route map, and how do people engage with the project?
Well, we've done a few things. So we've got a series of events. We call them In Conversation. So they're basically quite small, but I mean 50, 60 people in the audience, conversation-style discussions between women that have come from different sides of the profession, past and present. So the next event has Rosemary Martin, who is the current General Counsel of Vodafone, one of two women that I can think of in the FTSE 100 as General Counsel. In conversation with Dame Janet Gamer, who was the first senior partner of a top 10 law firm in the 90s. And they will talk about whether there is such a thing as innovation for diversity. And that will be chaired by a journalist. So it will be a very kind of accessible debate rather than it's not about being a lawyer and practicing law. It's about the story and how can we break through, and an empowering, inspirational way of addressing the issues of the day.
And Donna, what date is that?
That's on the 30th of September.
Okay.
And on the 2nd of November, we have our first annual conference, which would be, obviously once a year. We're running a conference. We called it Spark 21, around sparking the debate for the 21st century. And that's a one-day event. This is hosted and sponsored by Simmons & Simmons. And the day is chaired by Dame Jenny Murray, who's the presenter of Woman's Hour on BBC. And we have a number of guests, but not necessarily just from the law. It's about inspiring and bringing inspiration from outside into the law, and bringing really strong personal stories in to really make us understand that, who you are is really important, and you've got to trust yourself and create this kind of, authentic voice for yourself, basically. And one of the keynote speakers is Dame Steve Shirley, who is an IT entrepreneur, who's 82 and has an incredible personal journey from escaping, as a child from Nazi Germany and building the largest IT company ever founded by a woman in the UK, and being, I think, the largest philanthropist in the UK. And she has a really interesting story about setting up her business in the 60s when she wasn't allowed to even open a bank account as a woman. She had to have her husband go to the bank to open it for her.
Astonishing stuff. Well, listen, Donna, that's fantastic. And I'm going to repeat, it's the first100years.org.uk. We do include some notes with our podcasts about it. It's a fantastic project. And I genuinely really enjoyed researching this interview, and I think I'll be following it very closely. Thank you so much for your time. I promise very much not to hound you during your next holiday.
Thank you. I'm not planning a holiday anytime soon.
I suspect you've got a lot on, but thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thanks, Dana. That was the LawyerFair Daily Podcast. We are now on iTunes, so you can actually subscribe and download some of these chats. And as people who have listened to previous ones will know, we really do interview some fascinating people, legal innovators and general entrepreneurs. So LawyerFair.co.uk Daily Podcast, now available on iTunes. I want to thank Dana again, and thank you for listening. We'll be back again tomorrow.
Thanks for listening to the LawyerFair.co.uk Daily Podcast. If you'd like to listen to more, why not subscribe and download each episode via iTunes, or visit us on the LawyerFair.co.uk website.